Okay, so I thought this conversation with Kirsten Moore needed a little bit of an introduction, as it wasn't intended to be shared this way. Uh, I approached Kirsten about doing a blog post on Magpie Diner, and she agreed to do a phone interview. And I said, "Hey, is it okay if I just record the conversation because I don't want to, I want to be present. I don't want to take notes and have to ask you to repeat things and whatnot." And she agreed to it. And then within about 5 or 10 minutes, I thought, man, people just need to hear this. I think anytime you have an artist describing their craft, and I guess not all artists are articulate. I've heard that Robert Frost isn't very good at reading his own poetry, but Kirsten certainly is articulate and is able to express the vision, the inspiration, the evolution of how everything kind of fell into what is now Magpie, the Perch, all that stuff. So I highly recommend watching this thing in full. Or listening to it in full. It's no video, just audio, but it's awesome, and I certainly imagine you'll be even more excited about Magpie opening after listening to the whole thing. So without further ado, here's the conversation with Kirsten. Thanks so much for agreeing to do this.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I think like just the more I hear your name, the more I hear the things that you're involved with, like the more interested and impressed I am. So it's
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, do you want to just jump right in and talk a little bit about where things kind of started? Like, I guess in the entrepreneurial spirit, like, you've been doing different businesses for a while now, like where that all.
Yeah. Yeah, let me think. So I think one of the things that's interesting about Magpie is in entrepreneurial world, we often talk about an MVP, which is your minimum viable product.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of what I've done up until this point have been, fully formed and well-rounded businesses have been sort of an MVP for this. Um,
Okay.
um, so there would be Taste, which was a catering company that I started back in oh it's a long time ago, 2010 probably.
Okay.
um and that actually grew out of my ex-husband and I would throw these big giant parties in our backyard on Labor Day, and they grew and grew and grew, and they were sort of theme based, and everyone always said you should cater or you should have a restaurant, and I thought both of those sounded awful and horrible, because part of what I loved about throwing a party was it was your party and it was your friends, and to
Right.
me catering became somebody else's party and somebody else's friends, and it just seemed like a lot of work.
Sure.
And we got divorced, and I was kind of at this place because I had been home with the kids and just doing some freelance design work. My background is actually marketing and design.
Okay.
So I was English and art in college. And so all of those things come into play too. But
Absolutely.
my, uh, yeah, my MO after we got divorced was like, I just need to do what I know how to do. And that's cooking and entertaining. And so I started this company called Taste. And it actually stemmed from that Christmas. I had a whole bunch of my male friends call me like 2 days before Christmas and ask who in this town taught cooking classes, and wouldn't that be a great gift for their wife? And they were looking for last minute Christmas gifts. And so I created Taste with the idea in mind of it sort of being a four-pronged thing. One, there was clearly this demand for cooking classes, so it was going to be based around cooking classes.
Okay.
And then because my background was marketing and design, I would do design specifically for food-based businesses. And then I had done some food writing in the past for a magazine called 81. And so the writing piece of that was something I really missed. So that was the third prong. And then if and only if I needed to, would I consider catering? And
so catering business is kind of light on the
yeah, like it was like that was the last thing I felt like doing. And the funny thing was, soon after I kind of launched that, I never ever once taught a cooking class.
Oh,
I never ever once did a design project for a food-based business.
okay.
um, and I got another gig as a food writer, writing for the Stanton News Leader, doing their weekly food column.
Oh, cool.
And then soon after that, there was a couple who was going to have their church like hospitality committee cater their wedding because they were kind of on a low budget. And I guess as the wedding size grew, more and more people, like the people on the committee said, "Oh, I don't know if we can handle this. It's like it's kind of out of
Mm,
our scope of ability," and they kind of bailed on them like a month before the wedding. And so a friend connected me with them and said, "Hey, you should talk to them. She's just getting started, and they have a low budget, but like." And my friend said, "I'm happy to help, however." And so I met with this couple, and the wife was a vegetarian, and they were planning this meal that was so traditional and just based on kind of what they thought they could afford or what they thought they should do. And one of the things was a carving station, and so when I talked to them and
okay.
talked about it, I mean, this wedding was in the middle of July, and I'm like, we can literally have people donate excess produce at this point. I mean, like, produce is so
Yeah.
cheap, like
Yeah.
great veggies, and we've got these beautiful summer tomatoes, and everything's in season: corn, tomatoes, squash, all of this stuff. And why, if you're vegetarian, would you want the focus of your menu to
Right.
be meat based? And so we had this really long conversation, and they just didn't know what was available and didn't know what they could afford or what they thought they could afford. And we ended up doing this wedding for like $7 a head, and it was the most
Wow.
beautiful menu. I probably walked home with like $200 in my pocket. We had volunteer staff, but at that point, like, people that were at that wedding literally came into the kitchen to like tell me how good the food was. It was the best food, not just best wedding food they've had, but the best food they've ever had.
Wow.
And they hugged me and they asked me for recipes, and they were curious as to how the preparations were done. So it was this moment where I realized that like there was this need for a different kind of catering. And I actually hate
Mhm.
the word catering because it connotates like icky chicken and green
Right.
beans with almonds.
Right, right.
And if there was another word that I could come up with, I would use it, but there's not. So anyway, from that, the catering totally took off. I mean, my first 2 years
Okay.
of that were solely connected to that first wedding. And by the end of by the time I sold Taste, we went from $7 a head to about $70 a head. So
Wow.
the growth of that was pretty amazing. And again, just kind of the right time for that niche market of people who really wanted food to be celebratory and reflective of them, and more seasonal, more healthy, more fresh. So kind of found my niche that way.
Sounds like you kinda almost like a designer of, like,
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
yeah, meet with them and get to know them and
Yes.
create something for them.
Yeah,
That's
instead
amazing.
of just like, here's our catering menu pick from that. And so that was a really fun thing. And when I talk to groups, I often tell them, like, when you're an entrepreneur, you obsess about what if I fail, and what does that look like, and what am I risking? But nobody considers what happens when you are successful. And for a catering company to be successful, you end up having no weekends and no evenings and no
Right,
holidays. And at some point, I got to this place where I'm like, this is just not the life that I want for me and for my kids.
right.
And I need to think about what's next. And it actually kind of smacked me in the face one Christmas where I like hadn't even had well, first of all, I had like no that summer I had no weekends between April and October, like not one single weekend.
Yeah, I can
I
imagine.
missed some of my own extended family weddings that I couldn't go to because I was doing other people's weddings and some of those celebrations. And then And then at Christmas, I had no time to decorate, and I was looking for my kids' stockings, and I had no idea where they were. And I ended up getting one of those like tins that people give you like cookies in that we had laying around, and I like stuck it by the fireplace and put their things in because I just didn't have this mental capacity to handle that. And I'm like, this is not how life's supposed to go.
Yeah,
So
I can feel that.
yeah. So one of the last events that I did was around, it was between Christmas and New Year's, and I told one of my staff that was helping me, I said, I think this is going to be my last gig. Like, I'm just done with this. And she was like, "You're just going to like let it go after all the hard work that you did?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, like, that's the beauty of it. Like,
Right.
it could just
Freedom.
go away." Um, and I said, "Why do you want to take it over?" And so she and her husband discussed it, and she ended up buying the business and is still running it today.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
that was kind of a cool thing, that that's still going.
Are they
And
still
then,
based like in Harrisonburg? Do they go all
yep,
around or?
yep, they're based in Harrisonburg. I mean, she does travel,
Awesome.
for different venues and stuff, but it's based here.
Okay, cool.
Um, and and then my reaction to that was like, I got really tired of doing, uh when you're working on a wedding, you're on their timeline, you're serving
Hmm.
their food, like, there is that place where you're at somebody else's beck and call. And I really missed that sort of more intimate, smaller, uh, connection around a table. And I had this thought for a long time, and originally was going to call it 24 plates, or 25 plates, where you would have 24 seats, and the 25th seat would be for a nonprofit. And you would do these like fun pop-up dinners places. And
Okay.
then I realized that, like, the economics of that didn't really allow you to give much to the nonprofit. So I just tabled that. And I had talked to some of the wedding planners I had worked with for a long time about, like, could we collaborate on this, and just never quite found the right partner. Um, Meanwhile, I was doing, all through the whole catering and things too. I was still working full time for Blue Ridge Architects doing their marketing and business development.
Okay.
And we were in growth mode, and were looking for ways to expand our footprint, and looked into the co-working idea
Mm,
as a way to have a larger physical footprint for an architecture firm in a new town, but then be able to co-work the rest of it. We were also out of space here, so we're looking at the space where the hub is now. And had kind of started to make that transition there to like use part of that for the overflow and then co-work the rest. And then some things went kind of sideways in the company a little bit, and Randy Seitz, who's the principal, really needed to like refocus on architecture and his core mission. And he said, I need to like refocus and, kind of take the firm back. Do you want to run with the co-working thing? And so took that over and ran that for 5 years.
okay.
So that was kind of going on too. And when people asked me about that, they said, what's the motivation? Like, why is that, if that's not your wheelhouse? Like, what drives you to do that? And to me, it was just another arm of hospitality. Like, how do you create a place and a space and a thing that people want to belong to and connect to, in the same way that I was helping people connect to that food climate in their celebrations. And so it just, to me, felt like another way to do that. Um,
And
and
it's such an
then,
awesome thing too. I mean, like it was needed as
yeah,
unique.
yeah,
And like as somebody who, that's often crossed my mind to work somewhere like there. I often go to coffee shops. Like there's all the, being
yeah,
able to have some sort of community when I need to get work done too
right,
is
right.
just really cool.
Yeah. And then Jen Sodikoff was a member there. She had just moved from California and gotten married. And I didn't know her very well. She was actually sharing an office with somebody who'd been there for a while. And she came in one day and was carrying a bunch of like bags of sort of party supplies. And of course I was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, there's a bunch of stuff on sale." She said, "I love like styling dinner tables." She said, "I'd love to just do that. I don't want to, but the only thing to do around here when you do that is do weddings, and I don't want to do weddings." And I immediately perked up. I'm like, hey, I have this idea, we should talk. So we went to lunch. Um, and I talked her through this like pop-up idea. And she was totally into the idea, and then said, but how do we, how in the world do you do this? I'm like, I think we just do it. Like, we just throw this date out there and see what happens. And if there's a good response, we do it. If nobody responds, we don't do it. And so we created a Facebook page and a sign up
Yeah.
sheet. And I think in the first 24 hours or something, we had like 250 people sign up on the list. And it was, a lot of it came from those original like connections that I had
Right.
from the food world, from like writing and cooking and entertaining and all of that. And so there was already that basis sort of laid for that, which was super cool to see. And she was kind of blown away by it. And
Anybody
then,
that's
and
tasted your food was ready to sign up
yeah,
for
to
more.
sign up. Yeah. And so we started the Sub Rosa Supper Club, and we did that for, I guess we started in 2016, fall of 2016. So we did it for 3.5 years until COVID hit. Um, and that was just a really fun way for me to sort of combine that more intimate connection around food, the creativity that I loved about entertaining, really let me stretch my self as a chef and food person to really try new cuisines and teach myself things. Like, one of my favorite uh, dinners that we did that required a lot of research, which is will sound interesting, is a Mexican one that we did.
Okay.
And the one thing that I wanted to do was do something that was not expected, and not it was but was traditional and
Okay.
authentic. And I was super inspired by the Enrique Olvera Chef's Table episode, and so totally
Oh, okay.
started like crushing on his work and cooking, and so did a ton of research into what those preparations and ingredients were, and just create a really unique menu that was modern Mexican, and not, we didn't have one bean or one tortilla or
Yeah.
anything like that in it. And it was just really cool. So it's been fun for me through that to expose people to things that they haven't tried. And it's been awesome to have this. We have a mailing list of over 2,000 people to like expose them to things that they're willing to try. Like, I've had people say, my husband's a pretty picky eater, but you put something in front of him and he'll eat whatever you put in front of him. And so having built that like trust that like you might not know exactly what that is, or you might not have ever had that, um, and you
Yeah.
might not even like it, but you're certainly willing to trust me to give you good food and not to give you something weird and gross and like not practical. Like, to me, my food has always been really accessible and um
And
and
that says a lot because I mean your menus have been pretty adventurous. Like
yeah,
I mean, like it's not like you're just doing it simple and safe, like you're saying. Like
right.
that's a challenge. I love cooking. I love the chef's table. I've often said like I would have loved to have a go to find some like really high end Mexican restaurant,
Yeah,
spend 100 $200 a plate
yeah,
and really see what that's all about because I feel like we get the introductory food like the street food, which
yes,
is amazing.
yes. Yeah, and so for me to be able to like have Sub Rosa as a way to dig into other cuisines
That's
and
cool.
push myself was fun too. And again, the economics of it weren't stellar, but it was certainly a way to just stay fresh and active and interesting and engaged, and it was a cool thing.
Yeah, it had a
Um,
lot of buzz and
yeah,
that's probably helpful now too, right?
yeah, yeah. So again, sort of continuing that like innovative hospitality piece of it. And then 2 years ago, John Sala and Dave Rayo approached me about a building. They were fascinated by the co-working concept and have purchased lots of buildings during the time that I've had that, and they've run a couple past me, but none of them have piqued my interest. And 2 years ago, John reached out and he said, "Hey, we're just about to close on a property." He said, "I think this one is something that you'll really like." Um, and so I said, "Well, yeah, let me know when you close, and we'll go take a look at it." And so I pretty much grew up in this town,
Hmm.
and the Big L Tire building with its flat iron shape has always been this iconic um, building
Yeah.
in my mind. And so when he gave me the address of where to meet him, I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." And so I went down there. He said, "I think it would make it just an awesome co-working space." And I walked in, and it's first of all, it's huge. And I just, from our experience at the hub, I just know that it's not like the economics of that are also tricky because it's a very transient population.
Mm.
People start small and grow and outgrow the space, or they work temporarily for somebody remotely and then they get a job and then they move on, or it is a transient. It's not a super stable thing either. And so
Yeah.
the idea of filling that up all with co-working seemed too large. But when I walked in that front lobby, I immediately had a vision of what it could be. And it just to me felt like the right place for a diner. And it's funny, backing up a little bit, one of my husband's brother-in-law is a Frenchman whose family was involved in restaurant work. His biological brother has been in restaurant work for his whole
Okay.
life, and he's had very negative experiences with what that kind of lifestyle does to a family. And it was always kind of a line in the sand, like, I will never we will never have a restaurant in this house. And like months before the Big L thing even came up, we had been out for breakfast or looking for a good breakfast and just could not find what we wanted. We didn't want like a fancy frou brunch. We didn't want
Mhm.
like we just wanted like good solid breakfast. And we love breakfast, and all the places that we went either had a line or weren't what we were looking for. And we drove around for like over an hour and ended up at the crappy truck stop, and it was awful. And I'm like, how hard is it to like, like how hard would it be for somebody to make a good breakfast around here? And then we sort of started laughing and like, what if we did a diner, like a breakfast diner, and like, would that be okay? And he's like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So
Okay.
it's like months before that, there was sort of this like unspoken permission for both of us to even consider that. And so when I walked in that lobby, I immediately saw this, like, this is the diner. This is what needs to happen here. Um,
I
and
love it because it's so entrepreneurial. Like, I don't think a lot of people would walk into Big L Tire and see diner or all
right.
potential.
And
And
it's
as it's grown, it's like awesome. Like you
Yeah, it's
really
amazing, and it's fun for people to see, like, I can't like, the developer sent me a note. He's like, "I can't even" he said, "It's amazing." He said, "I can't even remember what it looked like before."
yeah.
So anyway, so I walked through the building, and I said, "I have like an idea that I want to run past you. So just give me a couple days, and I'll get you a proposal." And so I proposed this combo space. And part of what I loved about the building was this interaction between the upstairs and the downstairs. That there was this circulation pattern that could happen there that allowed for people to be downstairs in the diner eating and then wander upstairs and see what all those entrepreneurs are doing and all those remote workers are doing, and
Cool.
make connections in a different way. There was opportunity for us to not only host outside groups in conference rooms and meeting spaces, but also provide food and beverage service. That we can make those all day retreats or those networking happy
Yeah.
hours or that art gallery opening kind of an integrated piece of what we do. And again, learning from my catering experience and knowing the lifestyle that I wanted and didn't want, the idea of doing breakfast and lunch made it seem really feasible that like we could do this. Breakfast was a clear need. Lunch, I think one of the things that I hated about business lunches is going out to lunch and then feeling like I needed a nap
Yeah.
afterwards. So how could we create this like familiar diner inspired menu that's healthier and cleaner and lighter, that changes frequently, like every 2 or 3 weeks,
Uh,
and that really nourishes people. And love the idea of the coffee. And then started talking to my friends, Jose and David, about the coffee
yeah.
roaster. Jose and I had worked together at Blue Ridge
Oh,
Architects,
right. Yeah.
and so that was a natural fit. And then also having this other door be a bakery uh, portion of the diner that essentially baked for the diner, bread and pastry focused. And then also had a retail component where you could come in and buy bread and pastry to go. So it all just kind of started falling into place. And the developers loved it, and they just got super excited about it, which was awesome. And so we just plowed forward, and it's taken us 2 years to get here. We're close.
Yeah,
Um,
and then things happen.
yes, and then shit happens, and yeah. So when COVID hit, um, I was having a conversation. I knew that restaurants were going to be. I mean, I here's a little known fact. I've actually waited tables like for a hot second in high school, but I've never actually um, worked or owned or run a restaurant, and so this is new to me. And my MO is to hire people who do know what they're doing and have that experience. So I know where I think the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur is to know your limitations.
Yeah, yeah,
And you find people that can fill in those gaps for you. So I'm feeling super awesome about my team um, in that capacity. But when because of where we were in the process, and when COVID hit, and I have a mentor in New York and very in touch with the New York restaurant scene as well, that they were the
okay,
first kind of impacted. And I just
yeah,
knew that this is a huge thing. Like, these people are not only reliant on people coming out to their restaurants, but they're employing people at a really uh, low pay scale that rely heavily on tips and interactions with customers, that this is going to devastate that industry unless we do something.
right,
So I was a pretty early proponent of, like, do something, get takeout, get a gift
right,
card, all of that, which still isn't a sustainable model, but it was something.
right,
And then realizing too, in conversations with people who own farms and grow and raise produce and animals specifically for restaurants, that the bottom of their market just dropped out too. And here we are right at the beginning of growing season and all these things, that there's nobody to sell it to because there's not the business. That system was going to be impacted as well. Um, and for me, because we didn't have our building up and ready to, like, do any kind of actual food service ourselves, the one thing that we could do is help these farmers and growers and
mm,
producers and even other chefs and restaurants who didn't have a path forward. So we did this pivot to create Magpie and Friends local drive-through market. We had this, I posted something on Facebook on a Saturday maybe, and by the very next Saturday we were taking our first orders. So we did this super fast
wow,
pivot
yeah,
from idea to actual market. We did an online platform with the existing website that we had, and just we had talked about, there's a group in Stanton that's also doing the same thing, and I talked with my friend there who's part of that, and they do more of a, like, chef's, farmer's choice box or whatever, more of a CSA box style where you
right,
order veggies or whatever. And what it felt like to me was that what people really wanted during this time was choice. That we were already feeling like we had limitations on what we were
right,
able to do and decide on. And so if we could give people choices about what they were purchasing, that would be even better and a better use of their money, and more specific for the growers. So we just started calling farmers and chefs and said, hey, what can you do? What do you want to do? We partnered with Clementine, who's been awesome,
oh,
to use their patio because they weren't using the downstairs kitchen. We worked with the city to quickly, like, institute our business license and uh, permission to use the parking lot for pickup and things like that. So just acted really quickly, and that's, from an entrepreneur standpoint, that's another benefit if you can do that. Our first pickup, we had 35 orders, and that was giving people 2 days and no warning that we were doing this, and
wow,
then very quickly it grew to twice a week, over 100 pickups each time. um, and people um, were using it, as a safe way to get fresh food. it really served its purpose. I feel like now we've scaled back to 1 day a week, Monday
Okay.
pickups, because Clementine Patio is opening. They're closed on Mondays, so we still have access to that. And we've also started to see some decline in numbers as well. That people are just moving around more now that restrictions are easing. People realize that like they can still get things, but what people love having access to is the fresh food from local farms. Um,
Yeah.
and so we may continue to keep some of that in the market depending on what's happening when we open. Some aspect of that where people can get some product from us as well. We also included chefs from other restaurants, Food Bar Food, Bobico, and Clementine specifically. And for places like Bobico who closed down, it gave them a way to stay engaged and cooking and think through what they needed to do to reopen. And the cool thing about them was they would often buy things from the market. Like he would buy a bunch of bok choy to use in the dish that he made to sell at the market. So it's kind of this cool like
That's cool.
circle of stuff. Um, for Food Bar Food, they had completely shut down and didn't have a real path forward to figure out what to do, and it's helped sustain them. We've had several farmers say that, and in fact, they were sad that we were going down to 1 day a week because it really has helped them get through this. So we feel really good. It was not set up to be a moneymaker for us. It was really set up to help other people and to get food safely to people who shouldn't be in grocery stores and who shouldn't have been
Right.
out for a long time. So that's been a really great thing. And what it did for us was it was a great brand builder. It was again sort of this combination of innovation and food and entrepreneurship and all those things that are kind of the hallmark of what I do or what we do. And so I think it's taking us strong into Magpie opening, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gotten your name out there, and I think like I mean, one of the themes I'm seeing through all your ventures has been like kind of like community and relationship,
Hmm.
and this all kind of plays into that too with local businesses,
Yeah,
local
yeah.
produce,
It's
which is
interesting. I
cool.
had this week I think has been extra hard, and I felt there was a point in the last couple of days where I just felt really depressed about like both the restrictions, like we were even trying to think like, and we just got guidelines yesterday for phase 2, which starts Friday.
Right.
um and we were even thinking that like breakfast isn't a great to go food, and if we can't seat people inside, is it even worth us starting with breakfast? Like maybe we start somewhere else and work work our way out to breakfast. But like the vision of Magpie being this place where community gathers and neighbors come together and food as a unifying force, and people are working and living and eating and like this
Yeah.
busy bustling place, that all of a sudden it felt like Magpie completely lost its purpose because we both physically and philosophically were incapable of doing any of those things that it was intended to be. And so I found myself just kind of like feeling despair about it for a few days.
Sure. And we've all
And
been there.
yeah.
This
And
time.
then Monday night, I think, was a turning point for me where like, we all came together, and it's going to be fine. And we're going to continue as a community to be together. And that's important. And maybe Magpie is exactly what we need right now. And so I kind of picked myself back up and found some
Yeah.
reinvigoration about it because I do think it's going to be super important. It's a bridge downtown. It's a connector.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's going to be really important in our city's future. So
I mean, it just is so Harrisonburg. I mean,
yeah.
it is the yeah, good quality food, like gathering together, working
Mhm.
together, the community, like yeah, it it's awesome. And I think I hadn't before talking to you, I hadn't really thought about how perfect your pivot was in kind of carrying on that spirit
Yeah.
with the produce and
Yeah.
that shop. So it's awesome.
Yeah. So the renovation there was actually a historic tax credit renovation.
Oh,
So
nice.
a lot of restrictions on that. And with
Sure.
a three-sided building, there was also some relatively complicated things to work through. But the cool thing is when I like come down 42 and turn on Gay Street and I come around the corner and I see that building, I mean, I see this. I was just telling my husband this morning, I said, what I love is like, it looks like it preserved what that was. Like there's the
Yeah.
garages and there's the signs above the doors and there's, each bay has its kind of purpose. And it feels like it retained that historic character, but it feels fresh and bright and new and current. And I love that. Like I'm just so happy with how it's turned out.
It looks
And we're
awesome. It
thanks.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think so I've grown up in Harrisonburg as well,
Yeah.
and, like, to see what downtown was
Yeah.
and to know what it
Yeah.
is now and how it just kinda keeps evolving, and I think, like, everything you've been involved with, whether downtown or not, like, has been, like, part of that spirit, that exciting, like, we wanna gather
Yeah.
downtown, we're excited about what we have to offer, like, as a kid or as a teenager even, we had the mall.
Yeah.
Like
Right. This is super exciting. If that dies during COVID, I'm 100% behind that.
and now, as a realtor that gets to talk about the experience of being a Harrisonburg local, um, you know, being excited about what's happening downtown. Like
Yeah.
I can recommend a million different restaurants to try.
Yep.
And, and so, yeah, to continue that on, I think it's exciting. And I think we're all ready to be able to gather again. And
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I mean, there was questions about what that will look like and feel like in the future. And I just, I mean, for the co-working space, we now know that almost everybody can work remotely that has that kind of office job.
right.
And that, that sometimes working remotely doesn't mean effectively when you're at home surrounded by your kids and your pets and your laundry and your
Yeah.
yard. And the need for that separation of workspace and life space is going to be more important for people as they have that ability to choose to not go back to a traditional office.
Yeah.
That they can still be office independent but still have a dedicated workspace. So I think that will be good. I do think that people are ready to go back and engage with the community. I know there's still a lot of fear surrounding COVID. The nice thing
Mhm.
about Magpie is we've got these garage doors that can roll up, and the whole space is so like light and bright and beautiful. Like it's just cavernous and large and amazing. And
Perfect.
it feels open and airy, and I think that's going to feel different than a smaller tight quarters kind of place. So we have that in our favor, at least this summer, to be able to sort of throw up the garage doors and have a lot of what feels like open air seating.
Yeah.
um
That's awesome. That's critical.
yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
the beautiful thing regardless, but now it's awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
as we phase back in.
So the timing for us has been great. Like if we had just, I mean, I was hoping that we'd be open before July grad and earlier, all those things. And I think
Sorry.
that's all right. We got one of those too.
I need a
Um,
co-working space where there's no dogs.
right. Um, had we been open when I had hoped we'd been open, it would be a very different story because that would have been a devastating blow to have to shut so soon after opening. And so the
Right.
timing of this, as much as it didn't feel ideal in the beginning, has been ideal for us. And even now, I mean, we probably won't open the doors till July 1st, even if we're done tomorrow, it'll take us a while to get up and running. That we have time to watch and see how the public goes to restaurants and what they're doing now that the phase two, starting Friday, I guess you can have 50% indoor capacity as well. And so we have time to sort of watch and see how people are reacting. I think it's been awesome to see what Aaron's done with Jack Brown's and Billy Jack's in the parking
Mhm.
lot. It's fun. One of the things that made me sad through this whole lockdown was driving through downtown and it just feeling like a ghost town. And
Yeah.
this from growing up here, that like it used to always feel like that. And I just felt like this is not the town that I've invested so much time and energy and money into, you
Right.
know, to have it be empty and ghost towny. And I don't like it. I want it to come back. And so even if it's only a few tables for his business, at least the visibility of having people be outside and active and live, like that sort of alive feeling again is has given me some hope that we'll get there.
That we picked up food from there, and that was the first time I saw that, and it was I had that experience as well. Like it was just felt like, oh man, like things are happening again.
Yeah,
Like we have some
yeah,
life. Like it's
yeah,
there's hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah.
Um, what about the co-working space? So it's going to be upstairs. How?
Yeah, so the co-work space is actually all of the upstairs and then also the south end of the downstairs.
Oh, okay.
So,
And is
um, go
like,
ahead.
so is it going to be the same kind of setup where you could have like you could rent a space that would be your space, and then there'd be like community space that you could.
Yeah, so we have private offices, dedicated desks, and just general membership open workspace.
Okay.
We actually have a wait list for the private offices already.
Oh wow.
We'll probably end up adding more dedicated desks because I think right now the important thing to people is sort of that less shared touch
Right.
space.
Right.
Um, and the nice thing is the length of that building, it's so long and spread out that it feels like there's more places to social distance if you feel like you need to be, you know, away from people. There's a lot of places to work from in that building that will keep you kind of in your own space,
Sure.
even if you have a general membership. So um, it's really good. We have rethought things like, you know, how you arrange desks to have some partitions between them, you know, which adds cost.
Right.
What kind of furniture do you put in there? We had our eyes on this lovely blue velvet couch that was super fun, but like maybe velvet isn't what makes people comfortable right now. Maybe harder, hard surface touch stuff is, you know, more the thing that we should be thinking about. So we will probably kind of ease our way into that space a little bit. Not, I mean, people are can use it when we open, but kind of figuring out what it is that people need to work comfortably. You know, we ordered
Mm.
hand sanitizer dispensers for every conference room and all that stuff. But one of the cool things upstairs is we've got a really large conference room and then some smaller collaboration spaces. And then downstairs, the pointed end of downstairs is actually set up to be a more convertible space. So it can be used for open workspace during the day or anytime, but can
Okay.
also be rearranged for like seminars or the furniture cleared out for networking events.
Okay.
We have a gallery, like a 40 or 50-foot wall that's a gallery wall with a hang system on it and track lighting. So we can do First Fridays. We're right across from Sagebird Cider, so we'll, I'm sure, partner with them. Our ABC license application includes that first
Okay.
floor area so that we can host, First Fridays and have food and beverage and things
That's
like
fun.
that through Magpie. So yeah, so the idea of it all being an integrated business is kind of a cool thing and something different, and it frankly takes the pressure off both businesses to support themselves. There's a lot of shared resources between the two, and it will certainly help with not having full capacity ability to not have the table turns like we would. That they'll balance each other and should be pretty stable regardless. So that's a nice feature that a lot of restaurants would not have. So a
Yeah.
little pressure off.
That's great. I mean, I think they all play well with each other, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I would love to come
Yeah,
get some pictures or something at some point when it's
absolutely.
ready,
Yeah.
and see the space because it's really exciting.
Yeah, it looks I'm so happy with the way it's turning out inside, and, it's funny, I go down there 10 times a day, and every once in a while they ask me a question, I'm like, "I don't know," and I just start Googling pictures of what I like. I'm like, "How about we do this?" Or,
You said
"How far do you want these lights to hang down?" I'm like, "I don't know. What do you normally do?" And so
I was wondering
for
how involved you were with the design work.
oh, yeah, yeah, very I mean, it's funny, it was a very clear visual to me when I walked in that front room, like right off the bat. Like I could almost picture what it looked like, and it looks almost exactly like what it looks like on some of my sort of like inspiration photos that I shared with my original proposal. That it really was a clear picture of
Awesome.
what it should be from the start. And I'm really happy that it's turned out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going through a kitchen remodel and design and all that stuff, and I've been obsessive for
Yeah.
about 3 months. So I can only imagine like all the details, like
Yeah.
how
It,
much
yeah. And
goes
some of them you don't even think about until someone poses the question to you, like, what shape do you want the handle, like the railings to be? I'm like,
in
hold
Pinterest.
on, let me look. Yes. Let me refer to the Pinterest. Yeah, it's funny. We did a house renovation last fall,
Okay.
and we turned our basement into an Airbnb. And that was like the least obsessing that I've ever done about design stuff, because I think it was just like you could just pick things and you didn't have to be the one living in it or working in it or whatever. Like
Right.
it was completely like non-committal, and you just picked cool stuff. Like I have all this cool fun artwork on the wall, and I just picked flooring that I thought looked cool, and it turned out great. But it was so nice to just be able to just like randomly go out and say like, here's the pillows that I want. And because we're not, it's not our bedroom, and we're not like arguing about how many pillows are in the bed. So it was fun to just like whip through that. And then I get to this, to the details of this project, and I like, I'm obsessing right now over toilet paper holders. They're like, can you get the
Yeah.
toilet paper holders so we can install them? I'm like, yeah, want it.
But I mean, that's the stuff that really I think shines through,
Yeah.
and as a parent with
Right.
everything you're involved with. So I think
Yeah.
it's hard, but it
Yeah.
makes a big difference.
The bar stools that we're doing around the counter, I really wanted that sort of traditional diner feel without it feeling like a 50s diner. I
Mhm.
mean, because there's already this black and white checkered floor, but it's like it feels very modern and current. It doesn't feel 50s at all, and I didn't want people to think that when they came in. But I love that sort of fixed counter stool feel
Yeah.
when you come in, and plus it just looks neat and clean. And from my point of view, and there's a friend of mine on Facebook who had been somewhere, I think in Arkansas, and she posted a picture in a coffee shop, and in the background I see these like amazing counter stools that are fixed to the floor, and they're modern, and they're like, and so I tracked down this company in Canada who could make them for me, and they're supposed to get here next week. And so we had these, these custom made modern versions of soda counter stools. And I just, all those little details are fun to like to track down and just reinterpret how like that you want. And again, it kind of goes back to my whole philosophy about food. You want this familiarity and comfort that makes people, puts them in a position where they're willing to try new stuff. Like they'll come in and they'll order because there's bacon and eggs and counter stools, and it feels
Right.
like a diner. But they might try the Turkish eggs that go by on somebody else's tray and say, hey, what's that looks good, or tell me more about, or I'm going to try a different bread today, or you just want people to be adventurous in a comfortable setting. And that's where I am excited about the food aspect of Magpie, is that it gives us this really familiar, welcoming, comforting environment to both give them that food in a really good form, but then also like maybe just push people a little bit to be a little bit more healthy, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more adventurous, without scaring them off. So I think the environment and
Awesome.
the approach to our menu is going to be really awesome. So
That's super exciting. I love it.
yeah.
I feel like we're on chef's table right now.
Someday, this is my goal. Someday. Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for thinking of us.